Our pensioner power is the name of the game this hour, because the anger over the Labour government's decision to cut the winter fuel allowance simply shows no sign of calming, as just a short while ago, a 500,000 strong petition supported by countless charities and campaign groups was handed in, as you can see on your screens, to number 10 Downing Street and also to the Chancellor of the Exchequer's office. And the petition is calling on the governments to protect the winter fuel payment for older people living on lower incomes. It also visited Rachel Reeves' Treasury earlier on today, as I just said, piling pressure on this government to reverse their decision. But will it have any impact? Well, I'm joined in the studio now by GB News reporter Adam Cherry, and also by the director of Silver Voices, Dennis Reed, who, as you might recognise from your screens there, handed that petition in moments ago to Downing Street. Gentlemen, welcome to the studio. I'll start with you, if I could, Adam Cherry. The numbers are astonishing. In terms of the political priorities, as I said earlier, 22 billion quid has been found for carbon capture. 16 billion quid has been found by this government for overseas climate change. 10 billion quid for pay rises for NHS workers and teachers. And yet, 1.4 billion pounds they thought was a good idea to axe impacting pensioners. There's been a huge backlash across this. Is this the Labour Party's poll tax moment?
It could be. It could be. It's early in the Parliament, which is why they're hopeful they can get away with it, because they have 4.5 years to make up for it. But it's a serious problem for them. 522,000 people signing this petition already. And actually, I think part of the problem here is the way in which they went about this, announcing this massive cut, sort of in a vacuum. You remember when this was announced, just after they took power, Rachel Reeves says, to demonstrate fiscal prudence, basically, I'm going to have to make this decision. And then at the same time, it came along with pay rises for union workers, for public sector workers. So it looked like robbing Peter to pay Paul, and it looked like poor politics. Now, you know, even talking about the unions, I was at the TUC Congress just over a month ago, and they're not happy about this either, right?
Well, they voted against it.
They voted against it by a quite significant margin on the Congress floor. I spoke to pensioners at that event, and they were all furious. Some of them appeared on this channel and said, I think the same to you, actually.
They did.
So is it their poll tax moment? Possibly. It's certainly very embarrassing for them. You look at some of their new MPs, of which there are a number. None of them stood on a manifesto that promised to do something like this. So they find it very difficult on the doorstep, as I'm sure you guys will discuss, talking about this.
Well, actually, Adam, worse than that. In 2017, Rachel Reeves actually said that reversing the winter fuel allowance would be cruel. And the Labour Party's own data at the time said 4,000 pensioners would perish if the Conservative government of that era, Theresa May's government, reversed the winter fuel allowance. They didn't do that at the time, but this party has. Does that mean they don't care if 4,000 pensioners die?
Well, look, I'm not sure I'd necessarily say that, but they clearly, if you look at what they said, not just Rachel Reeves, there was Angela Rayner, even Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, in opposition, said we have a plan for energy in the winter. We would never cut winter fuel allowance. The language was very strong. And as soon as they're in power, a bit like with national insurance, which we've talked about on the channel today, once you're in power, things suddenly change. Things that weren't in your manifesto crop up, and the public don't like it. They don't like the cruelty, as you said earlier, and they don't like the hypocrisy.
Well, the pensioners certainly don't like it. And Dennis Reed joins me now, director of Silver Voices. You gave that petition in at Downing Street. Well done on that. Very irritated pensioners, very impassioned, very insistent, simply won't give up on this issue. And I was struck by an astonishing report that came out today from Independent Age, I believe one of the charities involved in this petition today, saying that half of pensioners losing their winter fuel payment can only afford to heat one room this winter, Dennis, and 44% are fearful that losing the winter fuel allowance will harm their physical health. Things like that I find incredibly difficult to take. And these kind of things are what motivated you to get your petitions going. Tell us about this amazing moment, handing it over, and also what pensioners are telling you.
Well, I think the amazing moment is really, spread over a period of time. All the people that rushed to sign these petitions. These are petitions from a number of different groups. Everybody that works with older people in any way whatsoever is strongly opposed to these measures, as well as the charities, as well as the trade unions, as has been said. Everybody is opposed to it. And Labour have made a big mistake here. I think older people are feeling very let down by the Labour government because of this measure. It will have an impact on the ballot box. I mean, let's just think, if this measure had been included in the Labour manifesto, or even if the proposal had actually come out during the general election campaign, there would be far fewer Labour MPs on their benches this time around.
Yeah.
But it does have that sort of pull, I think, as an electoral issue.
And in fact, at the time, we did some analysis here with the pensionervote.com and Facts4EU. We worked out the majorities in a lot of these Labour seats, because, of course, don't forget, well, you know, that every single parliamentarian that voted to axe the allowance was from the Labour Party. Every single one. And no other party voted to do this. It's a Labour Party issue. There are a huge number of seats where this issue alone could cost the Labour Party dearly. So the point I put to Adam Cherry, I'd like to put to you now, Dennis. Do you think pensioners are just going to forget about this? This just blow away in the wind?
Well, no. I've said many times, and I'll say it again now, this is going to be like a millstone round the government's neck unless they reverse this policy, or at least bring in some quite radical mitigating measures for it. There's no question about that whatsoever. They are going to suffer electorally as a result of this. And the government really need to read the runes on this. Everybody is opposed to it, and they're opposed to it for very good reasons. It's a political disaster, as we've discussed. It's also an economic disaster because more people will go on to benefits, and also the NHS will have to pick up the tabs during the winter when people succumb to the cold and their conditions are much worsened. So they're not going to save that money, and it's individually a disaster, as this latest research shows.
And Dennis, talking about that Labour Party data, their own data from 2017, which they said would result in 4,000 pensioners perishing as a result of the cold. And this survey today indicating clearly that pensioners are very, very concerned about that. Can you give us a flavour of what people have been telling you in terms of their anecdotal stories, their individual human stories about how worried people are?
I mean, that research is very interesting because it actually gives the reality of what it's like to be old on the poverty line during the winter. People only heating one room of their house because they can't afford to heat anywhere else. People sitting there with their overcoats, scarves and gloves on all day long because it's cold and they can't afford to heat their houses. People who only have a shower maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks because they can't afford to heat the water. Now, is that the sort of society we should be living in this country in the 21st century? I would say not. And that's why so many people are supporting our petitions and our campaign.
Adam, is there any chance that the Labour Party, there is still 14 days till the budget. They keep saying, oh yeah, but we've got the triple lock, we're going to make sure the pension is increased, it more than outweigh this. And Dennis, I'd be interested to get your thoughts on that. Is that enough to, well, can I ask you on that? Is that enough to satisfy pensioners? Well, there's going to be a pension increase and it will more than mitigate the £300 winter fuel allowance.
Well, no, because the triple lock increase doesn't come in till next April, so that doesn't help us at all during this winter. Also, the £300 will be a huge proportion of the triple lock next year, and that triple lock increase is supposed to be about all inflation, not just energy costs. So no, it won't be enough. No.
Adam, on that point, do you think? I mean, the Labour Party aren't completely tin-eared. Now, their own MPs, by your reckoning, Dennis, they're not even answering emails. They're almost embarrassed. A lot abstained, of course. There's only one voted against. Yeah. They abstained, so we don't know their true feeling. Is there any chance of a U-turn on this? Or is there any chance that they might announce some surprising, mitigating policy to try and make it go away? Because by any reckoning, this has been a PR disaster.
It has. Now, if there's a complete U-turn, I'd be very, very surprised by it, because that was a sort of hallmark of the Johnson era of government 2 or 3 years ago. You know, mounting pressure and then eventually giving in and actually looking weaker afterwards. They'll try and hold the line on that for the sake of looking like they're disciplined. However, I think it's also true that the amount of doom and gloom we're seeing going into this budget, and the amount of doomsaying that both Starmer and Reeves have been saying in public, I do think they need some sort of rabbit out of the hat. Now, whether that's for pensioners or whether it's for more pay rises, I'm not sure. But given given we're all being told to expect the worst for this budget, and also given the polling disaster that's been inflicted upon them because of this stuff, I think that we should be on the lookout for something. I don't know what it is, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Okay, final word to you, Dennis. I was joined by Sue Ashcombe-Hurt, a GB News viewer earlier on, and I said to her, the Labour Party watch this. Downing Street, we know, watch the channel. I asked her what would be your message to the Prime Minister, to Keir Starmer, or to Rachel Reeves. Actually, the same question.
I would say to them, you need to find a way out of this, which is going to be acceptable to older people, because they have lost the trust of older people over this issue. Even Labour supporting older people, still support Labour, know that this has been a mistake. So they need to find a way out. Now, Silver Voices has suggested if there has to be a cut-off point for this allowance, it should be much higher than the poverty level cut-off there is at the moment. We've suggested the higher rate of tax from Silver Voices might be an appropriate level. We would be prepared to discuss that with the government, but they do need to find a way out.
Okay, thank you very much, Jonas. Superb, inspirational stuff. And of course, it's Dennis Reed from Silver Voices, the director, and also Adam Cherry. Thank you very much for covering that down over on Downing Street earlier on today. Gentlemen, thank you very much.